All right, the way that we will do this, attack this. Go in your mind, getting the lights for me, please. What I'll do is I'll show you images. Now they're randomized, so they're not exactly in the list order initially. Okay, with the images, I'll show you an image, and then give you an opportunity to guess who these people are. And then after we go through the images, then I'll project the list so that you can write down the list. Sound good for each year? And then I'll talk about each one a little bit, probably as we see the images. Sound good? And then maybe a little bit more detail after the list. Okay? Yes, so we're going this previous year, 2019. Okay, to start off with. Who's this? Who is this? Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
You remember we referenced Greta a couple times last semester, and she's on the list because of her advocacy for climate, taking note of climate change and on global warming, and trying to get governments around the world to make significant changes. She kind of represents the younger generation, the idea that older people, well, they don't care as much because they're not going to be here, right? Because they have a limited amount of time left on the earth. So the younger generation is going to be here for a little bit longer. So she's kind of representing the idea that, we need to do something now. Otherwise, later on in our lives, it's going to be pretty bad. Okay. We'll get more details on her here in a little bit. Who's this? Kim Jong-un's a good guess. It's the leader of China, so it's not Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un, North Korea. Xi Jinping. Xi Jinping. Very good. I'll get you the spelling here in just a little bit, okay? This one's a tough one, so I put a hint, a couple hints out to the side. So he is from India. He is the president or leader, I guess, prime minister of India. Of a parliamentary system. So Gandhi is from India. That's good. That we got a connection there.
Oh my God. I'm being illusioned.
Does anybody know what this is?
Psychology, my brain is being...
Raise your hands, please. Raise your hands. Yes, Ms. Edwards. The Taj Mahal, right? So that's the hint that it's from India. This is a guy named Modi. He's the prime minister, M-O-D-I, of India. We'll talk about him a little bit more in just a second. Who's this? President Trump is on the list. It's not President Trump here. This is who?
Nancy Pelosi.
Yes, Nancy Pelosi. I'm surprised at how many students know that.
The first lady.
How do people not know that? More people are following government than I realized, that I anticipated. We haven't had that in the past. I'm going to put it that way. Yes.
Is that lady the first lady?
No, Miss Pelosi? No, she's the Speaker of the House. We'll get to her a little bit more.
Want to hear what's funny? The first lady says, "Oh, let's not cyberbully," while Trump is bullying this little girl for getting the best person of the year. Oh, that's kind of a...
The relationship between President Trump and Greta Thunberg is complex and conflicted. All right, this is the leader of France. His name is Emmanuel Macron. All right. So here's the list. I'll give you a chance to write them down, and then we'll go through each one of them together for a moment. So the Person of the Year award goes all the way back to 1928, and that started with Charles Lindbergh. He's the guy that was the first to fly across the Atlantic solo, I believe, right? And so they wanted a way to recognize him, so they came up with this particular award, right? So they've been doing it ever since, so we're getting close to 100 years here. Now this particular year, what they do is they create a list of candidates, they call it the short list, and then they identify one more significant than the others, okay? However, this year they did it a little bit different. So they identified a person that's the person of the year, but then the rest of the list, they put them into categories. And so there's more than just these items up here on the board, but I eliminated the others. Okay, the others was like the entertainment industry, and then there's one for like sports, but I chose the one that's probably more related to politics and government, right, since we're in global cultures class. Sound good? So let's go through a couple of these real quick. So you're going to get a chance to go through them here as we go as well. So you got Greta, right? And in addition, you have these. They'll be posted on the website. So later on, you can go back and get them if you'd like. Greta's only 16 years old, right? Really young. Really influential, though, right? So it kind of demonstrates the idea that do you have to be an adult to be influential? Not necessarily, okay? So I want you to, we're going to do something else in a couple weeks. I want you to keep that in the back of your mind, okay? She is the youngest person to receive this award in the history of the award, okay? She is from Sweden, just like Hans is from Sweden, right? We referenced Hans before as well. Yes, Sai?
So could we say that she's like an advocate for active nonviolence?
She is, yeah. You could say that, represented. You're going to see multiple examples of active nonviolence in the list. It seems like the list does have a little bit of a preference towards individuals that do show a lot of active nonviolence, okay? Now, with that in mind, to get on the list, you have to be influential, right? When it says influential, does that necessarily mean that you have to be positively influential? Do you have to influence for good? Not necessarily. So all you have to do is be influential. So you'll see that a little bit later. Okay. So it started just by herself as going on a strike from school. So she gained this information about climate change. She was learning about this stuff in school, and a lot of times, like yourself, we learn about something, right? We talk about something in school, in class, and then we go away from it, and then what happens? Yeah, we forget or we just move on, right? Well, she has Asperger's, and so for someone like her, sometimes things stick, right? And it gets to the front of your mind, and you can't get past it, right? And so this idea that what she was learning about climate change in her school made it a significant impact on her life, and she was just dumbfounded by how there wasn't much change taking place associated with it. So she decided herself to make a difference, or try to make a difference. So it started with this poster, right? She sat outside, didn't go to school, sat outside the parliamentary system that they had, and started this protest, and it just took off, right? So it became like a social media thing, and it has grown and grown and grown significantly, okay? You guys remember flight shaming? Talking about flight shaming? The idea of flight shaming, so in Europe, it's really taken off. This idea of flight shaming is taken off in Europe. So when it comes to transportation, if you choose to take a flight, it's not as environmentally friendly, right? As the alternative would be like taking a train across Europe. So they've really discouraged people from flying, and it's taken off so much in Europe that it's overran the transportation system, the train system in Europe. Everybody's buying train tickets now instead of flying. Okay, so they're having to make some significant changes that way. She was asked to come speak in the United States. So what do you think is going to happen? Do you think she would violate a rule and fly here to the United States? You can't take a train.
Take a boat.
Take a boat, exactly. And it's not something that's a short voyage. It took weeks, right? So she sailed across the Atlantic and did her speaking engagement, and then she sailed back over to Europe as well. I'm good. Weeks. Yep.
How many?
Do you remember the article? I think it's 3 weeks, something like that. I think it was something like that. Mr. Glick will get to the bottom of it here in a second, okay? But a big advocate for making changes on climate change, okay? She likes Suburbans. How do you know she likes Suburbans?
She pulled up to one of her things in a Suburban.
Oh, is that right? All right. All right, Xi Jinping was ranked second on the list. This is because of Xi Jinping's ability to overcome many challenges in the past year. Okay, so there's 3 significant things that have happened in China that haven't really deterred his role as a powerful leader in China. Okay, and that would include, we talked about the protest in Hong Kong. Remember, it was about those rules, extradition rules. right, going on there. So Hong Kong's kind of separate from China, and they have a lot of democratic principles going on there. And so those protests takes over, and he has dealt with that and not allowed that to really affect how much control he has. And he's really wielded a lot of power in that particular situation. Okay. The trade war with the United States, he was a big part of that, of those issues. We've had some negotiations going on within the past couple of weeks associated with that. And the detention of millions of Muslims. I think I mentioned this really short at the end of last semester, maybe on one of our Word of the Day contacts, but and it's been found out that China has put a lot of Muslims in these camps for re-education purposes, right? And from the Chinese government's perspective, what they were doing is they were seeing all the terrorist attacks that were going on in the Western world, in Europe and the United States, and they saw the association, we talk about stereotyping associated with the Muslim faith, and so they were taking some preventative measures that way. And so from the outside world, kind of is perceived as that's a human rights violation, right? Makes you think about some other internment camps in the past, okay? So he's dealt with all that and still maintained a lot of power. And he has this concept of the Chinese, or what he terms the China Dream, and that refers to China's goal of becoming the largest economy in the world, right? And they're headed in that direction, right? They continue to grow quite significantly there. So I think of Mao Zedong's Great Leap Forward and the efforts there, and how it eventually became the Great Leap Backward. Xi Jinping's a little bit different with his China's Dream. Okay? It's coming to fruition there. Okay? So Donald Trump was on the list as well, and that's because of some of the significant changes that have taken place just within the past year. They say that if just one of these took place during a presidency of one of the other U.S. presidency in the past, with their 4-year terms or even their 8-year terms, they would consider that to be quite the accomplishment. And so he's had 3 significant things just happened within the past year. And that would include his visit to North Korea with Kim Jong-un. Well, the U.S. president has done that. There's been some ups and downs with that, his relationship with Kim Jong-un. There has been some hopes for denuclearization of North Korea, and then there's been at times, some backing off of that, and then more threats coming out of North Korea. The emergency, he's declared a national emergency on immigration. Illegal immigrants coming into the U.S., the U.S. border with Mexico. And then there is the issue with the Golan Heights. You guys remember the Golan Heights? What's the Golan Heights? Yeah, it's a Palestinian territory. So within the past year, the United States has negotiated where it has returned to Israeli control. You remember the 6-Day War and the Yom Kippur War? So the Israeli victories there made the Israelis assume that was within their control, so they go into that particular area, build up Israeli communities. The United Nations have identified those and labeled those communities as illegal settlements for a long period of time. And this past year, Golan Heights has really been pushed back to control of the Israelis. Sound good? All right. Nancy Pelosi, she is the Speaker of the House of Representatives. So with politics and our government and the system, we have 3 branches of government. We have the executive branch, judicial branch, and the legislative branch. The president is under which branch? The executive branch, right? And then we have what we call Congress is underneath the legislative branch. Congress is made up of 2 different organizations. You have the House of Representatives and you have the Senate, right? The House of Representatives, you have 435 lawmakers there, and then you have 1 person to represent those 435, and that would be Nancy Pelosi, right? So she was elected to her position, or took on that position this past year, and so with a lot of the efforts of Donald Trump to get certain types of things done, she was the mediator on the other side to try to compensate, negotiate She's from the Democratic political party. President Trump from the Republican political party. Okay, so there's been a lot of back and forth there between those two factions. Sound good? So I say bipartisanship because even though there's been a lot of back and forth, there's been a lot of things that have been negotiated and passed, even though the House of Representatives is dominated by the Democrats. Modi is the Prime Minister of India. He's the leader of the world's largest democracy. And the reason why he's on the list is because of some significant changes, influential changes that have been taking place towards the end of last year. They put into place some new laws that was trying to help out minority groups in India to gain citizenship for minority groups in India. The majority of people of India are of what particular faith, what particular culture? Hinduism, right? And so there are these other smaller minority groups, and that's what the legislation was for, but there was one particular group that was left out. You might know what group that was left out. Yeah, Islam. Muslims were left out of this law. And so people see this as very discriminatory. About 14% of the population of India is made up of Muslims. And you say, well, that's only 14%, but it's India. How big is India? Big. It's as big as China, 1.3 billion people, right? So 14% is a lot of people. And so there's been a lot of protests because of that, and it's been perceived as Hindu nationalism from certain perspectives there, okay? The point, autonomy of Kashmir. Kashmir is a province in India. It's the one province in India that is predominantly Muslim. And over the course of the past year, there was a lot of protests going on there, and the Indian government pretty much put curfews on the province and then took away their internet as well, all right, to try to slow down the protests and the movement there. Okay, so there's some unrest in India. Jacinda Ardern, she is the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and she's on the list because of her response to the terrorist attack on a mosque in Christchurch. Christchurch is a community in New Zealand, so she represents this idea of multiculturalism, and she's also a big advocate for, like Greta Thunberg, change towards climate change and global warming. So they have banned single-use plastic bags and planted 140 million trees as well. So you can see the significance there in that direction. So it's kind of spearheading that idea that governments can try to head that direction. And she also extended paid parental leave for specifically women in New Zealand. And so what was really significant is that, first off, she's a female leader, and she had a child while in office this past year, and she took her parental leave as well, which just doesn't happen or hasn't happened in the past, right? So it's very representative for equality between men and women there. Macron, not much to say about Macron. He's on the list because really, from my perspective, a couple things that are outside of his control, meaning that the context of Europe and the European Union is really changing. In the past, the European Union was dominated by the Chancellor in Germany, and the Chancellor in Germany, which we'll see here in a second, she's in the process of retiring, so she's going by the wayside. Great Britain would kind of be next on the list, but they're going through Brexit, so they're getting out of the European Union. So who's left, or who's next up? It'd be France, and Macron would be the leader of France there. Sound good? All right, so that's this past year's. We're going to try to quickly go through the previous years, starting with 2015. Sound good? All right. Now, again, as we go through these are years in the past. You don't have to write very many details. I just encourage you to try to guess what the images are and then write the list down after we get finished with the images. Okay? 2015. Again, these are in random order to start off with. This, of course, is President Trump. So this is 2015. He was elected in what year? 2016. So even before he was elected president, he was on the list of most influential figures. Okay? Who's this? Some Chinese dude. Good try. Uber guy. All right. His name is Travis Kalanick. He's the CEO or founder of Uber. What's Uber? A driving company. It's like a taxi company, but you don't have to work for a taxi company. You can use your own vehicle to get paid, right? To really have a career, to transport people from one place to the next, okay? Yeah, he is. So he's no longer the CEO, I don't believe. He's been pushed off to the wayside because there were some issues where there was some discrimination and exploitation of women underneath in his organization, in his company. And where he's getting in trouble is the idea that he was aware of it, but there wasn't much done about it, right? And so he got himself in trouble there. Who's this? She looks like a Janet. Sue Ellen, she's an Angela or Angela. Angela Merkel is her name. She is the German chancellor, the one that I referenced just a moment ago. She is now getting closer to retirement and leaving that position as the leader of Germany. This is Jenner. What is it, the first name? Caitlyn Jenner. So Caitlyn Jenner was big in 2015. This?
That was the man.
This is al-Baghdadi,
Oh my God,
right?
it's hot, right?
This is Abu Bakr.
That was Bruce, right?
Bruce, yes. Lincoln. Yep.
Died a coward.
This guy has been probably in the news the past couple of days.
The dude that died. Did he just die in that bomb?
No, he did not. So it's different. So it's close though.
His brother.
His brother. Good try.
His son.
It's actually Hassan, which is close to his son. Hassan is his name. Hassan Rouhani is his name. He's the president of Iran. Okay. So here's our list. Caitlyn Jenner at the bottom. Travis Kalanick, the Uber CEO. Hassan Rouhani. Now Rouhani, back in 2015, the reason why he was on the list because he was negotiating the nuclear deal with President Obama at the time, back in 2015, right? So the way the deal was put into place, the United States would remove the economic sanctions on Iran, so the Iranian economy would improve, and then they would promise to not enrich uranium to the point of making a nuclear weapon out of it, right? Has that lasted? No, it has not. More recently, just within the past week, I think Iran has come out and said, we're not going to follow the rules of that deal at all anymore. Right? We're going to just enrich uranium to our own desire. Yes, Ms. Kaufman.
Is the Angela Merkel same as like Meghan Markle?
No, so I think it's an E and an A, so a little bit different. We'll maybe reference her in a little bit. Hashtag Black Lives Matter was on the list. So this kind of gives you an idea that you don't even have to be a person to be on the list as well. You can be an idea. This reference back in 2015, this idea that racism is still an issue in the American culture. Donald Trump was on the list, Abu Bakr because of ISIS, and then Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel was the one that was identified as the person of the year 2015. The reason why, the Syrian civil war was going on, and there was a lot of refugees. And so Merkel was the leader of really the European Union in making them more receptive to these refugees to take on. All right, she was making those concessions to encourage other European nations to be more receptive towards these refugees from Syria. And she's got, over the course of the next couple of years, she received a lot of backlash for that because of the terrorist attacks that eventually happened in, say, France. And so a lot of people say, well, these terrorists were able to come in because we opened up our borders to receive these refugees. Right? So there's been a lot of back and forth there. But she's kind of represented the European Union. She's been identified as really the most powerful woman in the world for about the past 10, 15 years. Another note, Germany was identified as the world's favorite country there for a period of time. You want to look up who's the world's favorite country now? I'm not sure who it is currently. I'm not sure if Germany has held that title for a few years. I'm not sure if they still hold that title or not. Okay. All right, let's get to the next one. Next year, we got 2016. Okay. 2016. Who's this? Hillary Clinton. So this is a presidential election year, right? You remember 2016 presidential election year? So she played a significant role in that. Who's this? Beyonce. All right. Beyonce was on the list because of her efforts to really continue that Black Lives Matter and race issues in the United States. This guy. Not China. It is a red flag. It's not France. Nope. It is Turkey. It is the president of Turkey. His name is Erdogan. There was an attempted coup to overrun his government, and he survived it. And after he pushed down the rebellion, he organized all the power into his position. And so it became extremely powerful. You guys remember talking about the Kurds last semester? They have no friends but the mountains, right? You remember the attacks that went against the Kurds? From the Turkish side, he's the guy that kind of made that decision to attack the Kurds there. Okay? This, hackers made the list of Times Person of the Year. Right? Again, you have to be positive influence. You don't. You just have to be influential. So you guys are frustrated today because every time you close your lid, now you have to log back in again. The reason why you have to do that is because of these guys here. We're suspicious of everything, right? Because of all the ransomware stuff that's out there now, it's a way to protect our system here at Eureka, right? There's a high school up north in Rockford, and they had ransomware take over their school system stuff. And they had to pay about over $1 million to get all that stuff back, right? So we're trying to protect ourselves, and one way that we protect ourselves is making you log back in every time that your Chromebook closes. Sound good? This is an organization that does gene editing. You might know what that is?
Oh, to make you...
Not GMO, good try. It is an acronym. CRISPR. CRISPR is what it's called. Okay? They have the ability to go in and snip particular parts of the genes. Donald Trump's on the list, and he was identified as the Person of the Year in 2016. A lot of that was because of his role in the election, being elected president there. Okay? Beyonce is down at the bottom. CRISPR, number 5. Erdogan, 4. Hackers, 3. Clinton, 2. And Donald Trump, 1. Want to quickly identify what the hackers broke into back in 2016. The U.S. Department of Justice, the IRS, and National Security. Makes us feel safe, doesn't it? They also hacked into these organizations. LinkedIn, Mail.ru. You know what that is? No? And Yahoo. I won't use any Yahoo stuff anymore. Okay? Alright, let's go 2017.
Oh yeah, Google sells.
Did you get the list 2016? I didn't give you the list?
You did, but you clicked on it really fast. Why did they go to the hackers?
I'm sorry. There. Let you write it down real quick. We're probably only going to get 2017. We'll probably miss 2018. I'm running out of time.
3 minutes left.
Yep. We got 3 minutes, 2 minutes to get 2017. We'll do one more, okay? All right, 2017. We got 2018, we just won't get to it, okay? Who's this? Yep, he's on the list again. Who's this?
Don't know.
His name is Robert Mueller. He was the lead investigator into the Russian influence over the presidential election in 2016. Who's this? Kim Jong-un made the list. All right, that was because of their increase in missile technology that they had. Taylor Swift and Ashley Judd here represents the Silence Breakers. the hashtag Me Too movement was really big in 2017. Wonder Woman was on the list, or at least the actress that represented Wonder Woman. It represents equality between men and women. Who's this? Xi Jinping. Who's this?
A person.
Oh, that's
Football player.
yes.
A football player.
Yeah.
Colin Kaepernick.
Wait, I think he made this down.
All right, there's your list. I'll give you a second to write that down, and we'll be finished today.
Donald Trump's hair looks like the top of a corn ear.
Is that right?